6th of January 2024 at 5:02 p.m. in Berlin, Germany. Welcome once again to our cosmic journey, casting our chart in the startup universe. Designer Jake here with engineer Trey as always. Hello, Trey.
Hello, Jake.
And welcome to 2024. I almost screwed up the year, which is why I paused there for a second because it's still not sticking with me.
I know, it's still fresh and new.
I
I
think
think
this is
this year is going to get long in the tooth very quickly, though.
well, and I was just about to say, like, I think this is indicative of what this year is going to bring. I know that there are many different types of astrological events that are going to cause interesting events to happen. I've been listening to a lot of those podcasts. I don't know if there's anything in the space weather about kind of preparing oneself for something as opposed to doing something, because in 2023, when I set my New Year's resolutions, I had them ready to go by the 1st of January. And I was like, yes, let's go. Let's do this. I know what I wanted to do. Spoiler alert, also spoiler alert, it's already in the past. There was 4 of them and all 4 of them were accomplished, which was kind of crazy. This year, however, because I decided that I'm a systems thinker and very rigorous, I've decided to create an entire object model for not just resolutions, but how resolutions fits into my values, my expressions as a person, my habits, my drawbacks, all of these things. And I've spent all of the end of 2023, the beginning of 2024, working on my system model as opposed to doing the work of making resolutions and doing this. So I don't know if that's in the space weather right now. How are you feeling about 2024?
I'm feeling good. I'm feeling really good. I think as far as cosmic is concerned, I'm feeling particularly great.
Oh yeah, this is about cosmic, right? I
Yeah,
forgot.
because we got plans. But also, yeah, I think there's going to be uh, some years I think are more pivotal than others, and particularly with like a U.S. presidential election coming up, that's fraught, let's just say, and many things happening around the world, and so on and so forth. Um, I think it's easy to go down a kind of like super hyper negative, anxious,
It's
like anxiety focused sort of
yeah,
tunnel.
yeah,
And like all kinds of things can happen, right?
correct. I feel like every end of year, the majority of people that are talking to me are saying, thank God this year, year blank is now done because this was terrible and I'm looking forward to the next year. And then there's a set of people that are like, oh, this year is going to be horrible because this this mundane event is going to happen or occur, or this astrological weather is going to happen, or whatever else that they're feeling. And at a certain point, I'm like, maybe we should try positivity. Maybe we should look back and like say, this is what worked for me in 2023. This is what's going to work forward. And I think sometimes because the world is such a messed up place, that people feel personally like that they don't want to be proud or happy about things that might be going on that's good in their lives when so many other lives and so many other things are happening around them. Ukraine, Russia war, Hamas, Israel war, things like that. And I think there's a place for you to have personal joy while still acknowledging the world around you is not necessarily all joy filled and as satisfied as you feel inside. That's just my take on it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And I think historically speaking, these things are waves and cycles, right? Like it's always there's always good things and bad, and or let's say benefic and malefic things.
Yeah,
And we're always having to deal with all of them. And like I think that's one of the things that I really love about astrology and just divination systems in general, is that they give you a way to try to navigate those situations in a way so that you can so that your boat that's navigating down the river doesn't knock against a
capsize.
rock and
Yeah,
capsize and toss you into a raging river and all that kind of stuff. You can kind of move around the rocks and things like that. And I think we've done a really good job at that. And
yeah.
I anticipate that our skills in doing that will continue to grow over time.
I hope so
As there
too.
becomes more and more rocks in the raging river.
Yeah, and I think that Trey and I are feeling like we're kind of on a high point right now with our work, and so therefore I think we're feeling a little bit more positive about all of this, fully knowing that there are rocks ahead personally for us as well. And so, It's all good.
It's all good.
Speaking of cycles, though, and speaking of kind of waves of thing, that's going to be a big part, or certainly a part of what we're going to be talking about today. Today, let me scroll the way up. Episode is called Stellar Shift, episode 16. We're going to, of course, start with a check-in question, and then we're going to talk a little bit about meaningful planetary stuff and what we mean by meaningful planetary stuff and kind of what the state of astrological software is today, who we're making astrological software in the future for, and given that, we are doing a stellar shift ourselves a bit, how we can meet those two together. Then a couple demos. Usually we have a lot to talk about, so usually the episodes go fast. If we don't have a lot to talk about, usually the episodes go very slow. So I have a good feeling about this one. Unintuitive, but somehow correct. It feels right.
Yeah.
Your check-in question, Mr. Henry. Go ahead.
Yeah. Okay. So, did you ever see this Star Trek episode where Picard?
The answer is probably no. I'm sorry, but
Okay.
keep
Yeah.
going.
I know you're. I know. There's some gaps in your knowledge in this one, but just because this one is so let's say archetypal that maybe you've heard of it, or maybe you know of this part where Picard sort of, I think he falls asleep or he goes into like a coma or something, but he lives an entire life, basically like 25 years or something in this kind of like alternate dimension of sorts.
Sure.
And then when he comes out of it, he was like only asleep for like 25 minutes or something like that in real life. But for his experience, like he spent an entire lifetime with like a family and all of this kind of stuff. And he learned how to play this like flute instrument, which that is knowledge that he retains coming out of the situation. So he's like,
that would be cool,
forever able to like have 25 years of experience of playing this flute.
That would be great. I would love that.
Yeah. So the question is, but I'm going to narrow it down because otherwise it's too open. So the question is, this happens to you, and so for 25 years you're in kind of like an alternate dimension. But in this alternate dimension, the only thing you can learn is one sport. Let's be even more specific and say one professional sport. So it has to be something that's like, like would be on maybe ESPN or be on BBC or something, like something where it's not like super obscure.
Okay. Now the question then comes, what do I want to extract as value from such a sport, and what do I value? So one of the things that
or maybe, I mean, there's nothing of value necessarily to like playing a flute, right? So I think, yeah. However you want to.
As somebody who just said that I created a whole system of values that have expressions, and those expressions have habits and barriers and all of this, they all, honey, it all adds up.
It all connects.
So it all connects. I mean, maybe this is recency bias, but I think I'm going to say darts. And the reason why I'm going to say darts is because I love the game. I don't play it enough. I feel like every time I have to play it, it's connected to a drinking event, and I don't drink any longer.
I was just going to say that, like, it's so deeply entrenched in kind of like bar and drinking stuff
and bar culture.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I think that's why I want to do it, which is kind of inspiring a new take on the sport that would help to reinvigorate it, not as something that is for basically a drinking game in which we throw sharp objects, but rather a sharp objects game where you might want to drink. I kind of feel the same way about curling. Curling is a little bit also this idea of like, it's a drink. It's a time for us to drink, and we throw stones down an ice court.
Yeah.
Curling is a close second for me. And the reason why I would be so relieved about this after 25 years when I was in the time pocket is because I have such little natural ability around dexterity and fine motor movements that I think then I could get over that thing. That's the thing that I think I kind of carry into my life, that I'm now all of a sudden more excited about, this kind of mind-body connection around this precision level of kind of hand-eye coordination. I would be super excited about that.
Yeah, I love it. I love it too, because like I like the idea that you would just like go into, some bar setting or something, get your like alcohol-free beer, and then just like destroy everybody at darts.
Be like, oh, I'm gonna have my water. Exactly.
Yeah,
What about you?
Great. I think for me it would be table tennis.
Of course.
Yeah, ping pong. Because
Tisch tennis.
Yeah, for one thing,
specifically in Germany.
I just love it. I love playing it. And I'm like okay at it, but I'm not great at it. There was like one period of time, which was kind of like a 25-year window in a shorter period of time, where I worked at a company that had a ping pong table in the office, and then me and some coworkers would play it basically at lunch every day, and we all got really very rapidly pretty good at it. So I imagine in a 25-year time pocket, you could get pretty damn good at the game.
Now, the
And
question I have for you,
yeah,
sorry to interrupt, is that now that we've been living in Berlin since 2018, and I think there's a different standard of table tennis in Germany than we have in the United States.
they
Were
take it
you
serious.
were you US good or good?
No, I was US good for sure. Like
Yeah.
not even US good. Like certainly many, yeah, yeah. Like I'm okay. Let's just say I'm okay at the game. Like
Yeah.
I can hold my own generally speaking. But here they are like our downstairs neighbor who I play with, fairly regularly. I think I've beaten him maybe twice or three times ever, and in the probably hundreds of games that we've played.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's yeah, he's very very good at it. And we have
And the,
outdoor tables
I was
here,
going to say
which is a
the thing about
riot because
the
wind does crazy things with ping pong balls.
it's exactly what I was going to say. The thing about ping pong or table tennis here in Germany is that I think the vast majority of them are outdoors, and therefore
Yeah,
you are subject to the elements,
yeah,
and you're subject to like it is wacky to play table tennis here.
yeah.
And also like there's you kind of are hanging out at a park and there's a woman there and you all brought like table tennis and you're like, I just want to play like a very friendly game of table tennis. And if she's German, it's over. Like you're dead. You
Yeah.
are dead.
She's
She
gonna
is
destroy
great.
them.
You are destroyed. You are American. You are destroyed at table tennis.
Yeah,
Period.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I would say that I was probably like middle, maybe three-quarters of the pack of any group of people that I might play um, table tennis with in the US. And here I am definitely in like the bottom quarter.
Oh,
Like,
I'm in the bottom eighth. I'm the bottom
yeah,
probably 10% then of ping pong players
yeah,
here. I
yeah.
love that answer for you. I don't think there's anything that requires a time dilation for us to do this kind of thing. So maybe I should start playing more darts while not drinking. You should play more table tennis, drinking optional, drinking not required, and
I thought you were gonna say drinking required.
drinking required. Maybe, yeah.
No, I actually, it's like most things. I think I can have like one beer and still be okay at ping pong, and after that, it's all gone to shit.
Problem with me is that I think I get measurably better at most sports after 2 or 3 beers, which is why I had to stop drinking because I would go to German class and I would notice that like my German is better when I drink like a long drink ahead of German class. And I'm like, I can't be this guy that just goes into German class like a little bit buzzed because like it's not healthy. Anyways. Um, cool. Good check-in question. I love it. Yay. Let's talk a little bit about meaningful planetary stuff. Yeah, give us the fireworks. Exactly. And for this, I'm going to share my screen. Oh, I wish that I would have, you know what? Actually, I'm here. I went through a whole journey right there in my head that I did not tell the viewer about, and that's absolutely fine. This here is the object guide for not only planet on the right-hand side, but placement on the left-hand side. So what's the difference between planet and placement? A planet is a planet, you can see here, but a placement is a planet within, or a planet or a point, I should say, within a date time, right? And for the purposes of like engineering, Trey doesn't care about the difference between planets and placements, but I care because there's user things about that. Like there's user requirements, I would say, around that kind of thing. The thing I was going to show you is I always kind of go through and find in the wild where these things exist. And as it turns out, planets inside of astrology software is very, very common. But the thing is, and I think the thing that I gathered while I was kind of designing the planet in the software is that every piece of software, you start looking at these things and you're like, these are wholly dissatisfying views, right? They're just like big, like lots of like, so you can see here that like, oh, I can't zoom in on this picture. I'm sorry. You can see here I'll zoom in when we I'll zoom in post. So
Yeah,
what you
it'll
can
be
see,
really pixelated.
yeah, it'll be super pixelated. Sorry that it looks so pixelated. But you can see here for Mercury, like we're using a lot of words to describe the position, the speed, its declination, and its status, which is a weird word for that. Like it's moving in direct movement, it's moving fast, as opposed to just using words to describe things, which is very much a telling type of thing, is the idea of showing. Here's another kind of bigger view of Pluto for the solar annual eclipse that's going to happen in 2024. I think this is the one in October. It shows you the position and the speed of each of these things. And it shows for this one, when did Pluto last station? When's its next station? And again, like it's all telling, but not showing. And so the hierarchy here, and I'll go to this for a second. The hierarchy here is telling is the bottom, showing is the middle, and experiencing is the top. You always want someone to experience something rather than show them. And you want someone to, and if you can't do that, then you want to show rather than tell. Why do I bring all this up? This finally gets to the thing that designers are classically trained to do and to think about, which is how do you best help someone experience all of this data that they want with the planet? And I didn't go through the object map, but there is a ton of data that we can or could show to the member. But instead of just telling them, we want them to experience that kind of thing. That's number one. And number two, all of those screens that I just showed you in Planet does not really take into account enthusiast astrologers. Like it's hard to get into these software because it's telling you a lot of stuff that's going on and not showing, and it's not helping you to experience these things and get a kind of like inside feel of what these things mean as part of working through an astrology process.
So if we wanted to move away from purely telling to instead showing and experiencing astrology so that enthusiast astrologers can get more of a kind of gut feel for this stuff, where can we find inspiration in order to do that when we start designing this stuff?
This is actually this gentleman. I believe that this is Edward Tufte. He is one of the granddads of modern kind of visualization techniques. I don't know what's going on with his wall here, but I love it. I don't know what this is, but I want it in our product. But then you start looking at things like this, right? So this is something about baseball players using performance enhancing drugs and how their kind of career arcs happened. And the thing here that I really liked about it is that there is certain like kind of movement of things. And then in the red area, there's movement of things. And we have this idea of benefics and malefics. We have this idea of things moving direct versus retrograde. And to show those types of things, those moments in time where those speed changes happen. And then imagine on top of that, you're journaling a lot of stuff around your life. Having a journal that maps up to kind of what was happening in space at the time seems really compelling to me. I love this one because I was looking for stuff that had really smooth lines, and you might have to turn it sideways in your mind, but like this idea of like these arcs of like planetary movement and how the planets are affecting you, all about it. This is directly from the Honeycomb, um, the almanac. I keep wanting to say atlas, the almanac that
Oh, Atlas is a
we
good word too, though. I love that.
Atlas is a good word, but it's an almanac that we purchased. So it shows you placements, either transits or just normal placements. But like, and we've shown this before. There's an episode before. I can't remember what it is. It's going to be linked up in the upper right hand corner that is going to talk a little bit about like this idea of like, I remember saying like you can bring in beauty into the situation to explain something, to show something. And so when I believe that Madeline Decotes, who created this, also creates the has a hand in creating some of the merchandise that is on the Astrology podcast. Like that's the stuff that we showed in the store in that episode. So like she's obviously very good at this idea of like data visualization um within an astrological context. Now, the problem, or I guess the limitation of all of this, is that this is all static. And now we're looking for that experience thing. How can you start making these things dynamic to actually tell a story about speed, direct versus retrograde, when it stations, where it sits, what are the influences of those things upon a natal chart, things like that. That's where we're going with Planet. I'm super excited about it. Obviously, I've gotten some stuff together for it. Okay. Actually, this is not going to be a short episode at all. I'm talking way too much. So let's move on then, unless there's anything else you would like to talk about in terms of kind of our design philosophy, who we're designing for, and how we're talking about that with planets and placements.
No, I think we yeah, covered that pretty well. I think it's good for people to realize the kind of like the much broader scope of stuff that we're talking about, because everything that we show right now is like, it's like it's hard to connect the dots between sort of what exists in the world today, what we have shown like in these videos, for example, and then some of the stuff that we're talking about having done. And so hopefully what you're going to see over the course of 2024 is that those things start to come into tighter and tighter alignment.
You will see it.
Yes.
It's going to happen. Let's move on then to your demo of time hotkeys reverse, which I believe has to do with what we found in episode 15, which you can see right up there. I'm going to say our funniest episode. I'm just going to put it out there. That was so far our funniest episode. So if you haven't watched episode 15, get to it. Check it out. It's up there. All right. Start demoing.
Yeah, so we noticed, well, actually really Jake noticed that I was having a hard time with the hotkeys because the positionality of the keys on the keyboard didn't map up to what I was seeing on the screen. And it actually took a little bit to we actually worked through that in that video, which is great. And then share screen. So yeah, so what we talked about is that we had year, month, day, so it sort of goes from left to right here in this, basically like ISO, whatever, 8601 format of date and time, kind of goes from bigger on the left to smaller on the right. And the hotkeys actually went kind of like in the opposite direction.
So why wouldn't you go the exact same way across your keyboard?
Right. And so Jake was like, well, we should try that out, get a feel for it. So we did. That was 1, 2, and 3 that I hit, and now 4 for minute, 4 for hour, 5 for minute.
Intuitive.
Yeah, it makes a lot more sense. It's easier when you're like actually moving through things and talking through things. It's much easier to figure out. And then N or 0 to go to now. But so yeah, so great, we fixed that. It's just one of the many things. But I think what one thing that I wanted to show here just very quickly is this is the change in the code. We don't usually show code, but I want to talk about this just very quickly from the perspective of why it's important to build things the right way as the best that you can, right? Like obviously you can't do everything perfectly all the time, but trying to build things so that they are robust and sound. And, we went back and forth on hotkeys and the console commander and the console, the Cosmic Console, and commands, and like how all this stuff works and overlaps and all of this, right? And it's a lot of processing and work, but this is literally all the change that I had to make in order to fix this, which was changing the number 5 to the number 1. The number 4 to the number 2, the number 2 to the number 4, right? And that was the only change that was required. And it was fixed in the console, it was fixed in the hotkeys, it was fixed in the display, all of those things, right? And this is what gets missed when you have a sort of MVP culture where you're just like, okay, well, let's just do whatever we need to do in order to get something in front of people. And we talked about technical debt in the past, but the weight of that technical debt that you take on and all of those decisions that you're not making just eventually come home to roost. And that idea that you're going to go and fix them later, it never happens. And so it's really important to try to put your best foot forward. And that's definitely our philosophy from an engineering perspective. So I just wanted to kind of harp on that as we did great. Like, this is awesome. This is from that bug. If you're not a developer, you're not a software engineer, you would expect that somewhere there's the number 4 is in there somewhere and you need to change it to the number 2, right? Like that's what you would expect. And that is not how most code works.
Yeah. Well, this is what happens when you say we're going to do a software development process that requires 80% of prototyping and 20% of productionalization. Because what Trey, if you do that the opposite way, and we talked about this last episode, I can't link to it because we already talked. You already have a link to that episode. You can only link to the same episode once. Weird YouTube thing. But if you remember in that episode, we said instead of spending 20% of your time prototyping and 80% of your time productionalizing, you should swap that. And when you swap that, what ends up happening is that your engineers have to write things in very kind of, I don't know, flexible ways to say, like, we don't know if this is the right answer, like what we're putting into this code. And so if we're going to have to change our answer, let me do it in a way that makes the most sense to me, to future me, to another person that has to come in and change this code. You always want to be kind to your future self. And so don't make mistakes today that your future self is going to say, crap, how did I do that? And like, why are these all ASCII characters? And like, what is the, like, there's a bunch of ways that Trey could have done to create shortcuts in this stuff, but he knew that the majority of our time is prototyping. So he did the right things, knowing full well that we're going to have to change them later. So good on Trey. Love it.
Yeah, and then we were able to change them very quickly. And the punchline to basically what you just said is that most, I would say people generally, but specifically software engineers, have a mindset of I'm going to solve this problem, and then I'm going to move on to the next thing, and that we've talked through it, or we have a spec, or we've talked to PMs or whatever, and like this is what we're doing, and then here's the implementation, and then I'm not and then we're done, or maybe I'll have to fix some bugs with it or whatever. I don't want to get paged at 2 o'clock in the morning, so I make it robust for solving that particular problem, but not, as you said, flexible necessarily. And the thing is nobody knows. Nobody
Right.
knows what the end point of your thing is going to be. And if you haven't built it in a way that it's flexible so that you can make those pivots, then then you're going to be hurting down the road.
Yeah. And I know that we've showed this before, but I'm going to show it again. Like if we were doing a spec culture here, right? Like, look at how detailed the native spec is. This is just about this is not even our core offering in the service that we offer. This is just like a kind of a side thing that we have to do, but like it's not our core offering. This thing goes into so much detail and goes on and on and on and on and on. And in a traditional software process, the idea would be, okay, now that you have done that, designer or product manager, toss it over to me. And then once I'm done with that, exactly, the task is done, I need to move on. Even with this much thinking through all of this stuff, there's no way that we can get a feeling for this. And if we know that this stuff is right. And I know that can be incredibly frustrating to software engineers that want to just kind of have a predictable set of things that they're going to do. That's not the world we live in anymore. And the more that we try to command and control these things by saying there's a process in place by which you do your work, and then there's a wall in which you throw it over, and then I do my work, and then there's a wall that I throw it over at customers, it doesn't work anymore. And if you hear frustration from my voice, it's only because it's been the last 20 years of my career that I've had to deal with this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's I think flexibility, like that ability to change course as needed without having to go back to the drawing board. Like that's where the game is in software engineering at this point.
Sometimes you might have to go back to the drawing board because you make such a huge feeling error on this stuff, and you're like, we were completely wrong. We try not to do that, but it happens. But
it hasn't happened. Sometimes it's business thinking. Sometimes it's business thinking.
Yeah, sometimes it's business thinking. Look, we had to rewrite to get to so below and as above 3 times. So we feel it. We understand.
Yeah, exactly. So okay, so I want to show one more thing, which is actually a good segue from your showing the object guide for native there.
What's a Frigatebook?
We'll talk about that later.
It might have something to do with No Man's Sky, also referred to in last episode. Trey does not spend 100% of his waking hours working on Cosmic, and it's actually part of his performance review that we're doing right now together.
Yeah. yeah, it's cool. But anyway, so we've talked about we've shown the schema associated with native and event. We've shown the object map. We've shown the object guide. We've talked a lot about this. It's a very robust and complex thing. We've also talked about how we use this thing called Livebook to provide functionality for the application that isn't necessarily going to be customer facing or member facing functionality, but it might be functionality for us for understanding the business. It might be for administrative functionality, creating natives and
Prototyping.
events, things like this, right?
Yes. Prototyping, all kinds of things. Just
Yeah,
getting it's part of
prototyping,
our feeling as well.
Yeah, and it's great. It's such a great thing. So anyway, this is by no means complete, but this was part of what we did in the cycle as well. Was to I spent a bunch of time buttoning down. So we created the schema in the last cycle, and then this cycle I spent a bunch of work on the objects in the application itself to provide functionality around those, and then spend some time on this Livebook. And so I'll just show a few things here.
Can I ask a question while you're getting things open?
Yeah.
Is there a difference between buttoning up and buttoning down something?
Yeah, it's an interesting one because you can also batten. So if you
Batten down.
yeah, you always batten down. You never batten up. But
Who battens up?
button up, because button up sounds like a shirt,
Yeah, you're
right?
buttoning
Or
it
like,
up. I'm
yeah.
buttoning it up,
You button it up.
but I'm buttoning it down.
But
Is
if you button down-
buttoning down actually a perversion of battening down?
Yeah, I think it might be. There's also that we have a friend who's archivist, like a does like library sciences type stuff, and actually does like archiving of like physical books and things like this, and has all of these like binding tools and stuff. And one of them is a boning knife, which is a knife that you use for, and the verb is to bone, and it's a like folding a piece of paper and getting like a really tight crease on it.
It's
And
very
you-
satisfying.
Yeah, and it's really satisfying, especially with like a tool that is made for this. And you I think you bone it in or you bone it down. I think you bone it down or something like that to get that like super tight crease. So there's like a whole
Only two uses of that verb: to bone down, the bone up, bone in.
bone up. You don't bone up.
No, boning up is that's something different, right? You can bone up on a subject, right? I had to bone up on German before I took my
It's
test.
true, actually. Yeah, in a non-sexual context. Yeah, there is like, yeah.
I was just talking about sex.
Yeah, that's so weird.
I was
English
talking about
language.
sex.
Anyway,
Anyways, please go ahead.
yes. So we have this Livebook now. I'll just quickly show a few things here. So we now have the ability to find somebody by name. So I put, just as kind of some demo data in here, I put myself and my mom in, so having the same last name.
Aw.
If we do this, then I can see that I get some values back. I am showing a very tiny tip of the iceberg of the amount of information that we have available. Just as a quick demo in here, you could see this is kind of a little bit of what's available.
Is your mom's birthday in there, by the way?
No, I only put mine in.
Okay.
For the purposes of demo. But could easily be.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. So anyway, so then we have another thing here, which is to get the events which are associated with the native. So this is that, if you remember back from prior videos where we were talking about the sort of many-to-many relationship between natives and events.
Every time you say crosswalk table or you say many-to-many relationship, you are required by law to take your left hand, fan out your fingers, your right hand, fan out your fingers, your left hand, fan out your fingers, and do this. That is by law.
You can have, like a native might have a birth as an event. A native might actually have multiple births as an event. How could that happen? Because we might have multiple conflicting birth dates for somebody.
Celine Dion, of course, of anybody in this world, Celine Dion is a conflicting birth date. Why wouldn't she?
Yeah, exactly. So so we can, using this, finding natives, you can see here that there's these unique IDs which are created by the database. I can come in here and find by the unique ID, and then I can come down here, and then I can, this is the events that are associated with that specific user. So this basically like loads up those events. So this is one of the events. There could be many events. In this case, there's a birth event, and then it's got my stuff in there. And you can also see that it's associated with the location, and then the location has a bunch of data that's associated with it as well. This is how relational data models work. And so then, so that's all really cool. So now we can kind of like poke at this data from a, without having to build something specific for this into the application itself. And it's a little bit more of kind of like a playground to do things in, as we've demoed in the past. And so then the last thing that I wanted to show here is the ability here to simply create one, and to create a native in this case. And there's something that I'll just talk about quickly here, which is that this idea that you have the Livebook context, and then you have the application context, and then you're kind of like able to talk between them, provides all of this just incredibly powerful capability. One of the things that I'm doing here is there's this status field that we have, which, it's these values right here, draft, private, public, and archive.
Yeah, if it's draft, it's not complete yet. If it's private, it's not going to be shown public. And then, right, go ahead.
Yeah, relatively self-explanatory. And there might be more of these in the future. And this is this set of things is just it's a dynamically derived sort of set of things, right? Like I didn't type these
Didn't hard code
the Livebook, right?
Yeah, it's not hard coded in.
And so, but what I'm able to do is, because I'm able to get these things, and then also because Elixir is so rad, I'm able to basically say like, get these things. This is what's called a comprehension, but basically it says like, get all of these things, and then sort of remap them into what's called a keyword list, so that I have like a key and a value. And then if I come down here, then I have basically just like a little form here, and so I can.
Hey, you spelled my name right.
What's that?
I said you spelled my name right.
Yeah, well, I mean, actually, technically, it should be this.
That's true, because I go by a nickname or an alias.
You go by a second name. We have 5 name fields.
Okay, I know you're upset about this, and we'll talk about it later.
We don't need to process my feelings about it right now. So anyway,
I like that. By the way, I said earlier, it's like, oh no, we're just gonna give feedback like normal. They started giving me feedback. I'm like, shut it up, shut it. I don't want to hear it. Over.
Yeah, exactly. So I just created a native, and so then we can come back here, and this is also it's case sensitive, but it will find the string anywhere in any of those names, and so I can do this.
Should mail the JoJo's.
Found you. Wow.
There he is. Good old Joseph Sikowski.
But it's just really cool because it's, Livebook just gives us this really great way of just doing all this. Okay, fine. I'll show my Frigate book here really quick. Okay, this is No Man's Sky. We've transferred into No Man's Sky territory.
The viewer was desperately waiting to see. So we call this. All right, go. You explain the game first of all. Like, what is going on in the game here?
Yeah, the game it is a vast, a very, very complicated space exploration game. Let's just say.
That's fine. And one of the things you can get in the game is a frigate.
Yes, yeah, exactly. And you can have multiple frigates, and you can kind of send them on missions and all this kind of stuff. And there's a whole game of sorts within this game related to this. And there's, as Jake calls it, the frigate BMI calculator, which is basically used to like determine what, based on stats of the frigate, like how good it is. Basically, it gives it kind of like a score that you can use to kind of rank them against each other. But then, of course, I also use this to manage my frigate fleet. So I have a bunch of, I have the data from all of my frigates in here. This is like my team. This is like my sports team. Here, I'm just gonna like expand this out here for a second so that I can. So I've got my combat frigates, my exploration frigates, my industrial frigates, my trade frigates, and then they have their like rankings shown. They like their like all their various stats, etc. And then I use this for determining like when I need to get new frigates and like when I need to send them on new. But it's a lot.
It's a lot, but I'm very proud of you that you are using Livebooks and Elixir for fun and profit. Be well. We love you. Happy Saturday or whatever day you watch this, and we will see you again very soon. Bye.
Bye.